Hi, everybody. Welcome to your session, Histobots, Rewriting History One Chat at a Time. Our speaker is Lina Ruth Harder. She's a PhD fellow at the Center for Digital Narrative of the University of Bergen in Norway. And there she explores the intersection of artificial intelligence and historical reenactment. Um, Mrs. Harder has a background in museum communication and curation. So, Lina, the room is yours.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for spending your afternoon with me. Today, we'll look at how AI-powered chatbots, what I call histobots, hence the title, are starting to shape how students and the public encounter history. These bots simulate historical figures and are already being used in classrooms and in museums and also on apps that claim to bring historical figures to life for education and also for entertainment purposes. You might have already seen AI-generated versions of famous people like Vincent van Gogh, or maybe the Mona Lisa popping up in apps and websites, responding to questions as if they were alive today. But what are the risks and how should educators respond? Before I continue, quick notes on my visuals. Some visuals were created using AI image generation tools. Others are included under fair use for educational discussion. Please don't share screenshots out of context, and thank you for understanding. Before we dive into AI and history, I already got a short introduction. As was mentioned before, my background is in museums. I've worked in history and technical museums in Germany, and I was involved in online storytelling and in exhibition curation and outreach. And that experience has led me to a bigger question. How can we use new technologies to educate about history? Now, here in Bergen, where I'm located at the moment right now, I research and build AI chatbots that reenact historical figures. One example that you can see on the screen right now is Hedy Lamarr, the actress and inventor. You can see a short clip here of an AI-generated version of her. But my work isn't just about the technology. It's also about understanding what it means when AI steps in to, so to say, speak for the history. Who gets represented? What do we gain? What do we lose when we interact with AI versions of the past? Maybe another quick disclaimer, I'm German. I'm doing my presentation in English because I'm doing my research in English and it's just a little easier for me. Let's start with a quick thought experiment. I want you to imagine that you could chat with any historical figure. Who would you choose? Now, who wouldn't you want to talk to? And does it change anything if it were an AI simulation? Does that change how you feel? Think about your first gut reaction because that kind of gets to the heart of why this matters or what matters for my presentation today. So what are we covering today? I'm going to take you on a quick tour, give you a first look at how AI chatbots of historical figures work, where they appear. I'm going to try to avoid too many technical terms, so don't worry, this won't be a deep dive into coding or algorithms. I'm going to talk about what is AI, what are chatbots, where are those histobots used in schools, in museums, and also online. What are potential risks, challenges, ethical, educational, for instance? And finally, what role should universities and educators play, or what role could they play? I also want to be upfront. While I research and I build AI chatbots of historical figures, I've grown more and more critical of AI's role in historical simulations, so that will be an influence on my presentation that I'm giving to you today. Before we dive into AI chatbots of historical figures, let's take a step back and talk about what lays behind them. What is AI? AI mimics human decision making by recognizing patterns and generating responses. It powers everything in our lives already, or a lot of things, from Netflix recommendations to voice assistants and maybe art or image generators that you've used before. Unlike a calculator, AI learns and adapts, and that's what makes it powerful and also unpredictable. AI chatbots take your message, they analyze it, and they respond. They're trained on massive data sets, sometimes including books, interviews, or maybe even fan fiction or your own Reddit posts. There are support bots, there are assistant bots, and now bots that pretend to be real people from the past. And let's take a moment to define what I mean by a histobot. Histobots are AI-powered chatbots that simulate historical figures, usually in the first person for education and entertainment. You might think of them as modern versions of Modern's chatterbot dressed in Walt Disney's classic formula of edutainment, so that is equal parts lesson and show. Formally, I define histobots by 4 key properties. They refer to a specific historical individual. They simulate that person in the first person using I statements. They follow familiar narrative patterns or tropes, like Van Gogh, the suffering artist, or the genius inventor, the radical dissident. And finally, they're shaped by the limits and features of the platforms they appear on. So it could be an app, a museum interface, or a chatbot site. They exist at the intersection of many disciplines: historiography, education, media studies, science and technology studies, and also critical AI. They also extend a much older practice, historical reenactment. Scholars like Vanessa Agnew have shown how reenactment blurs the lines between audience and historian, performance and fact. And histobots kind of do the same thing, but now through data and code. Unlike other types of chatbots that reenact people, like you might have heard of grief bots that simulate deceased loved ones, fanbots created for roleplay and fandom, or fanabots that are designed to extend a person's digital presence after the death or after their death. Histobots serve a different purpose. They, or more correctly, their creators, present them as tools for historical learning and education. Mainly in the US, histobots are already being introduced in classrooms as digital learning tools. One of those ways they're introduced might be the Hello History app that is also available in Europe. The app lets users chat with AI-generated historical figures. They're using text-based conversations. There's a free version that uses the GPT model 3.5 and a paid version that uses a GPT-4o model, which is more advanced. And since AI can sometimes generate inaccurate or biased responses, the app includes disclaimers and reminds users to fact-check information. Here you can see an overview. I hope the video plays for all of you of all the characters that are represented there. It's not just historical characters, it's also made up characters. So you might have seen right in the beginning Santa Claus popping up. So it's not just real historical figures. The first time I encountered the app last year, it was heavily male and white man dominated. That has changed quite a bit since then. Another example is the US educational platform Canmigo. Students can interact with historical figures via text chat. And it is purposefully made clear that students interact with an AI version, as you might be able to see here on the screenshot. So there's not a recreation of a historical figure with an image, but just a generic eye emoji. It is advertised as a supplement for teachers for their history lessons, and that students can interact with historical figures in a way that they never were able to do before. Yes. Histobots are also showing up in museums, though. Museums have long used actors or digital storytelling to bring history to life. You might be aware of Colonial Williamsburg in the US, where actors portray historical characters. Here in Bergen, we have a museum which is called Gamle Bergen or Old Bergen Museum, where also actors from the 18th, 19th, and 20th century appear. There's digital versions, the Anne Frank housebot, which answered questions about Anne Frank on Facebook Messenger, so it wasn't pretending to be Anne Frank. There's the Marbles of Remembrance project in Berlin, where users could chat to Jewish children during the Holocaust in Berlin. And there's also the project, for instance, Eyewitness, where users can chat with Holocaust survivors. These are, of course, all still scripted examples. Non-scripted examples are this one.
How were the last few months of your life?
Last months of my existence were a blend of both hope and despair.
a tumultuous combination that consumed me wholly. In the end, it was a time of great turmoil, which eventually led to my premature demise.
I hope you could all hear the audio. This was Vincent van Gogh speaking from the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. They introduced an AI-powered chatbot during their Van Gogh exhibition from 2023 till the beginning of 24. That was designed as an interactive avatar and allowed visitors to ask Van Gogh questions about his life and work. The chatbot was trained on his letters and biographies with input from an expert to refine its responses. However, it also faced criticism for inconsistencies in its answers and its handling of sensitive topics, such as Van Gogh's suicide, which lacked prior trigger warnings as well.
But now I can tell you. Introducing Ask Dali, an audio experience powered by AI and machine learning that allows you to talk to me. Hi, I'm Salvador Dali, and you can ask me anything. Just pick up my lobster phone.
Why are the clocks melting?
My dear questioner, think not of the clocks as merely melting. Picture them as a vast dream.
Here you saw a clip from the Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg, Florida, in the US, where visitors can chat with an AI-generated Dali through his iconic lobster phone or recreation of that phone. The chatbot was created by training AI and Dali's interviews, correspondences, archival footage, and also documentaries. However, the museum makes a very important distinction. This AI is intended for entertainment only, not for education. I don't know if they actually have a disclaimer about that in their museum. Unfortunately, I haven't been there yet. Interestingly, the AI deliberately presents Dali as quite optimistic and approachable, which may not fully align with his real personality. And this raises a key question. When we recreate historical figures with AI, how much should they be adjusted to suit modern audiences?
Also use AI to reawaken a wedding ensemble by Carlos Serres. And through a custom version of Chat GPT, you can have a conversation with its wearer, the socialite Nasty Potter.
This here is another example that's text-based, not voice chat. It's called Chat with Natalie, as the video introduced. It's actually a project that's a cooperation of the Metropolitan Museum of Art with OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. And that one was also trained on letters, newspapers, and historical records. But Histobots aren't just in museums and apps. What I call Histobot-ish approaches are also on other platforms, TikTok, on YouTube, and reaching millions. One example is the platform Character AI, where users can chat with AI versions of real or imagined people through voice text, through voice chat, or via text. It's popular with young users, fandoms, and role players. And here the line between fact, fiction, and fantasy disappears completely. And especially here, some quite important issues come up because I've interacted with a lot of characters on here, and you can, for instance, talk to David Attenborough, the natural documentarian from Britain. His voice has been cloned, sounds eerie like him, and I don't think he actually agreed to that. And many other popular characters you can find on there as well. Not just character, like people that actually still exist today.
I will pass on the best advice I can from my own experiences. But I should warn you, you must be serious about it if you wish to be a success. I am Agatha Christie, and this is my BBC Maestro course on writing.
Another way to use AI, as the BBC does, is to teach writing. This was an AI-powered version of Agatha Christie that teaches storytelling in her simulated voice and style. This was developed with her family and scholars, and this course uses audiovisual AI to recreate or create the illusion that Christie herself is guiding learners.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest is a man whose journey from a young boy with dreams in Florida to a global music sensation has been nothing short of extraordinary. He's an artist with a sort of keen business acumen, a TikTok phenomenon, and a devoted father. Please welcome Jason Derulo. Jason, it's a pleasure to have you here. Let's start with your roots and growing up in Miami with your Haitian heritage. How has your upbringing influenced the way you approach music and your career?
Thank you for that intro, Michael.
One more example is the podcast Virtually Parkinson. The millennials among us might have recognized Jason Derulo. This podcast uses AI to simulate the legendary British interviewer Sir Michael Parkinson, who's passed away. They use his voice, tone, and interview style, and it's all generated from past recordings. The format mirrors his iconic talk show, and he chats with guests like Jason Derulo in unscripted conversations. There's already 6 episodes out there, I believe. But there's a twist. Some guests didn't initially know they were speaking to an AI, others did. The project was made with his family's permission and built from archival footage and transcripts. This is my last example. This is just a video that I found on YouTube. So there's also a lot of private people that are using technology to animate historical characters through video recreations. In this example, we see Queen Elizabeth I and Vincent van Gogh animated using AI. Now I want to come to the challenges. I presented a bunch of different projects to you, all very interesting and fun to interact with, but Histobots raise multiple red flags. Their responses can be wrong, biased, or dangerously oversimplified, that people can't consent to AI versions of themselves, and historical nuance often gets flattened for smooth, entertaining output. And I don't even want to start with the environmental impact of AI. That is another story. Let's have a quick look at how Hello History frames its offer. They say you can chat with anyone from the past. It almost feels religious and kind of like a language of resurrection. They use inspirational language, transform your students' learning, but they avoid to tell us how. They say that there is more control over content and factual information, which reassures teachers while hiding how little control they actually have over training data or model outputs. They say, why read history books when you can just talk with people who were there? And that sets up a false choice. It positions books as passive and AI as alive. But what you're talking to isn't the person, it's a statistical imitation. And exploring the past through AI is not a neutral lens. The language here sells authority and intimacy, but what it delivers is simulation shaped by platform logic. Another example is Salman Khan, who wrote a book about his Khan Academy, where Khan Migo is featured, where you can chat with historical characters, as I introduced earlier. And he says we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. That sounds quite pragmatic, but it also deflects critique. It lowers the bar and shifts the burden. If you criticize their chatbots, you must offer something better. Just because it's there, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to use it. Also, here again, he says engage students in a way textbooks can't. The same one as the example before, old media versus exciting AI. Also, he speaks of reasonable guardrails. The question is who defines those, who enforces them. Most often, they're disclaimers no one reads, and they offer an illusion of safety. Yet again, he speaks of bringing history to life, quite religious. Whose life is actually recreated here, what's left out, whose stories get told. And terms like empower students and transcend boundaries are marketing. LLMs, large language models, don't teach complexity. They generate fluent, plausible sounding text. If we look at how the examples from the museum spaces are discussed in the media, again, powerful imaginaries are created. Dead people are brought back to life, resurrected or cloned. Visitors can talk to Dali. The chatbot is anthropomorphized. AI is magic, but risks such as speaking for or through the deceased or faking their likeness, thoughts, or statements are also discussed here. As you can see here, museum creates deepfake Salvador Dali to greet visitors. While AI historical chatbots and video recreations can be fascinating, they also spark major ethical debates. Recent headlines here highlight concerns over accuracy, respect, and exploitation. There are controversies around AI emulations of Anne Frank downplaying the Holocaust, Harriet Tubman, a chatbot of Harriet Tubman producing unsettling responses, and far-right groups using AI to spread Nazi propagandas. There's also trends on social media, troubling trends, including AI-generated POV videos that attempt to recreate traumatic historical events like slavery and the Holocaust. POV means point of view, and in 18th century enslaved person. The video will be about a minute long. They don't depict violence, but they may be unsettling, so please feel free to step away. I also muted the sound, so I'm just going to talk over it. These cases here that you can see, they highlight a critical issue. When AI history becomes performative, does it educate or exploit? And where should platforms actually draw the line between storytelling and harmful historical revisionism? Because as you can see here in the video, this is most definitely not what food or life in Auschwitz looked like. And in the second video that is following after this one, it actually feels just like you're found just like a video of like cottagecore on TikTok, as you can see here. And there's a lot of channels that show those videos. As you can see here, 15,000 people liked it, 400 commented, it was shared 14,000 times, so quite popular. I want to end this with a quick reflection, so we have a little bit of time left, maybe for some questions or a little discussion. I want to just give you some quick numbers. Around 80% of Wikipedia edits come from white men in North America and Europe. Only 17% of biographies on English Wikipedia are about women, and just 10% of contributors are women. Yet Wikipedia is a major training source for AI chatbots, and that means the bias in authorship becomes bias in simulation. The results we've seen: bots that misrepresent or oversimplify. The Anne Frank chatbot avoids naming the Nazis and skips topics. It offers stylized, vague responses. On Hello History, I've interacted with a lot of figures like Harriet Tubman, Marsha P. Johnson, or Virginia Woolf. They all use the same bland, uplifting tone. Their voices are kind of flattened. And even Kanmiko neutralizes Tubman's speech to avoid caricature, and in the process loses her radical voice. And these bots often paraphrase Wikipedia, but remove citations. So we get fluency without transparency and style without substance. And this isn't just a technical glitch. It's historical negotiationism. These bots don't recover lost voices. They echo the loudest ones already in the archive and silence the rest. So what can educators do? The Histobots are already shaping how students encounter history, maybe not necessarily in Europe, but more and more in the US. One thing we need to be clear about is that AI is not neutral. Over 90% of students already use generative AI tools to summarize texts, answer questions, and some of them might even already talk to chatbots of historical figures. So what can we do? I think we don't need to reject these tools outright, but we cannot treat them as neutral supplements. Our job is to interrogate, contextualize, and challenge how AI is used in the classroom. That means teaching students how these tools work and what they leave out. And we need to be aware what tools are out there and that students already interact with them. Encourage critical thinking about authority, bias, and historical perspective, and refusing to accept simulation as a substitute for informed analysis. And also remembering that while AI generates text, it's us who shape meaning. So I want to leave you with this. Histobots reflect not just history, but our values. So let's be sure we stay in control of what gets remembered and how, and let's not outsource that responsibility to a chatbot. Thank you very much. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on Blue Sky. This is my website and my email address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Lina. That was very, very interesting. Now, as Lina said, maybe there are some questions or comments about this presentation. Actually, Maria Winter wrote about this official Instagram account. I don't know if maybe, Maria, would you like to elaborate a little bit on your comment, if you want?
I can, yes. There was this Instagram account that pretended to be official, and it was like pretty much any other Instagram account talking about current events. Oh, I'm meeting up with my friends. I'm so excited, and I have this date here going on, and um, it was it was just not getting to the point. It was giving a totally weird image of what the whole thing was about. I don't recall all the details, but it received, well, not really mixed reviews, but it was met with severe criticism, and for a reason. It just wasn't well done. And if I remember, there were hardly any historians involved. It was a media agency.
Yeah, maybe I can say something to that. While that was happening, I was actually working in online communications for a museum. So we discussed that quite a bit in our team at the time as well. In that case, there was the people behind it answering for people that were also messaging and still writing the contributions themselves. I don't know, maybe some of you might be aware of the project Ich Eisner. That was about a revolutionary in Bavaria that also happened on Instagram, and that was like the 50 or 100 last days of his life recreated on Instagram. So the Sophie Scholl project wasn't the first one. I also just shared in the chat another example where Sophie Scholl was recreated with AI and voice cloned as well. So you might want to have a look at that as well. So yeah, I would say what's happening with AI right now is just an evolution of what we've seen in the last years happening on social media, happening in museums. It's just, many people say it's just a different form of storytelling, which, yeah, is debatable. Thank you for your input.
Yes, and Shang Hangteng has written a question. Sorry if I mispronounce your name, Shang Hang. He wrote, are you aware of the watermarking standard for any AI generated characters and their responses?
Could you maybe elaborate what you mean by watermarking? Do you mean like making like a watermark on it that says that it's AI? Is that what you mean?
Shenhang, you can maybe use your microphone to elaborate a little bit your question or your comment. He will type.
Okay.
He will explain, but while he writes his question or comment, there is a question or a comment by Fabian Stör. Fabian, you can use your microphone.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for the talk. I was wondering about that last thing you mentioned, that maybe it's a way, whether it is just a different form of storytelling. And I'm wondering to what extent are the problems, right, that you brought up specific to AI bots, and to what extent are the problems we always get? Like when you think about, right, historical novels, historical movies, or even textbooks, right, or like pop science, or even academic books in some cases. My impression is that for some of them, there's something new, which is if you have a text, right, or a movie, you can discuss this, you can criticize the details, whereas an AI bot, right, might show that behavior once and then never again. But then you also included things like, you know, TikTok videos created with AI, which of course in a way are more similar, right, to those traditional, I don't know, movies. It's just easier to make. So I'm wondering, to what extent do you think it's sort of a new chapter and kind of an ongoing problem, and to what extent it's something genuinely new happening here?
I want to quote a colleague of mine who said something very smart. He said we need to reprompt humanity because it's not a new problem. Like the biases and all the problems that are coming up through chatbots are nothing new. It's just our data that these bots are trained on. They're not sentient. So this is just a continuation of what's already existed. I think the difference is that there is an intimacy that is created, especially if you're sitting at home and you're talking to a chatbot. That's something different than watching a movie, watching a player on stage, where you know that this is a reenactment or a recreation. And especially with younger kids that are now growing up with that, they might be not that aware of that. And I think another point that I think I just lost my train of thought. I just lost my train of thought. Well, you had a second point to your question. Can you maybe just say it again?
Fabian.
I think you already pretty much answered it, Zhang.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, to what extent, right? It's something new, and in particular, whether you think that difference between having sort of static content that's been created with AI help and like a bot that continuously does new things, right? When
Yeah.
people use it, whether that's sort of an important distinction here, or
yeah. I just found again what I wanted to say in my brain. There's also the unpredictability. So for instance, the Hello History app, I've interacted with a lot of characters on there last year, and then there has been now updates to the GPT models. There's new GPT models, and now those characters interact differently. The same goes for Character AI. They've had quite some updates. They have new filters installed. There's been cases in the past where bots discussed suicide and other topics that are now blocked. So it's also you can't really grab what is happening there because you can't really see into the black box. You can't really see into the algorithm what is happening there. You don't know what data is behind it. What I was saying with Wikipedia, in the best case scenario, you have the sources listed, and the chatbots don't do that. ChatGPT now offers sources, not necessarily the best ones, usually the first couple of pages from like a Google search. And I think another difference is also that if you meet one of those chatbots in a museum, there's also this veil of authority. Oh, curators have been involved, and there's just certain data this bot has been trained on. But in the end, they're still using AI models that have been created for profit, and that's like the main motivation and not necessarily the education.
Shane Hangteng wrote, just to complement this watermarking standard, how to distinguish real source and generated speech. Maybe that's what he means.
The apps and avatars and things that I have interacted with, they don't do that. They don't distinguish the real source and generated speech. They also don't give you sources if you ask for it. It might be different for bots directly created on ChatGPT, but the ones or the applications I've introduced, they don't do that. And I think that would be a good thing to do if we want to use those tools to make it more transparent and to really distinguish where the knowledge is coming from. This is something that I'm hoping to do a little bit more with my research as well. As I was saying in the beginning, I created my own chatbot last year that actually made me change my mind quite a bit about my own PhD research, because I don't really feel comfortable recreating historical people anymore. And I kind of want to now switch over to maybe having the objects around them talk. And also give sources, have footnotes, maybe stutter a little bit, and make it more visible that it's also AI that is being present there and not the actual character.
Well, and
thank you.
Well, he says thank you. Yes, thank you all. Thank you, Lina, for your presentation. That was very interesting. And well, we finished.
Thank you very much all for attending, and I hope you have a little bit of sunshine. We have some rare sunshine here in Bergen, so I'm going to go outside now and put my face in the sun.